Hi, this is Matt McIntosh and this is going to be video 2 of my 3ds Max tutorials. So what I'm going to show you in this video is how you can go about making use of the edit poly tools. So to start off with, what I'm going to do is draw out a polyplane to work with, and to add the modifier that we're after, go to the little modify tab here, click on it, and you will see that you have a drop down modifier list. So if I click on the little arrow, it gives me access to any appropriate modifier that can be applied to this object. So I'm after edit poly, and what this allows me to do is select the various elements within this object to actually start editing them. And what I mean by that is, if I click on where it says vertex, I can select the individual points of the mesh and start dragging them around and moving them as and how I want them. So that can be quite useful for when you start building any other objects or meshes that you're intending on doing. Next to that, I've got the edge tool, and that connects up the actual points that are in the mesh. So if I select one of those edges, I can move that around, and as you can see, it moves two verts at the same time. Now, to add to your selection, just press the Control key and select the edge that you want to, or the vert, or the faces even, that you're after. Now, you can select whichever ones you want, and if you make a mistake, just press the Alt key and drag a marquee over the top of it, and that will take away from the actual selection that you've got. The next one that we've got in this element list is the border. Now, this works for any object where there's a hole or an incomplete mesh. So for example, if you had an eye socket, you'd be able to use the border to select any open edges that are in that mesh. Next to that, we've got the Polygon tool, and that allows you to select the individual faces of your object. So yeah, that can be quite useful for just, selecting things and moving them around. And then finally, we've got the element tool, which allows you to select all of the polygons in this specific object. Now, if you're making a character, maybe it's got a head that's separate, an arm that's separate, a body that's separate, and all you wanted to do was just select the head polygons, you could use the element tool to just select which one you wanted, and it'd select all the polygons in that object. Right, so to get working with the edit poly tools, I'm going to make use of the ribboned feature up at the top, and to do that, I'm just going to double click on where it says modeling, and what will happen is it will expand out this bar of individual elements that you can apply to your object. So I'm going to start off by using the faces, and what I want to do is make use of the swift loop tool to add in some additional geometry, and you just need to float over the faces that you've got, and it will indicate where you can add in those new spans. Now, you've also got a very similar sort of feature called insert, and the difference between swift loop and insert is that if you select one of your edges and click on insert, it will implement a swift loop in the middle of those edges, so it can be really good for putting in geometry at even points. If you wanted to get rid of some of these edges, all you'd need to do is, for example, if I want to get rid of this span here, I'm just going to double click on it, and that will select the entire span for me. Now, you've got this feature up here as well, so if I just click on select one, click on loop, that will allow it to be selected. And again, if I select one and click on ring, that will select it in the other direction. If you wanted to do that with a shortcut key, select one, press shift and select the next in the ring, and that will select everything for you. If you wanted to get rid of one though, for example, All I'm going to do is press the Control and Backspace, and that deletes any of the geometry that was in there and keeps it nice and tidy. Now that's good for getting rid of loops, but if I wanted to get rid of rings, what I could do is press the select one of the edges, press the Shift key and select the next one, and then I could make use of the collapse tool. So if I click on that, what it does is it brings those edges together. What else can we make use of? Well, if I switch over to vertex, what I can do is make use of the Weld tool. So if I wanted to actually bring these two verts together, I could make use of the target weld, and that will allow me to connect those bits up like so. And I'll just add in another there. There we go. So what else? What if you've got geometry missing in the middle of your element? Well, you could make use of the target weld to bring those things together, but what I'm going to make use of at the moment, and I'm switching to edges for this one, is I'm just going to select an edge, select the one that I want it to connect up to, and where it says bridge, click on that, and there you go, that's connected those things excuse me, connected those together. We've got a bit of a gap between these two spans, so what I want to do is actually just double click on this area, and I'm going to make use of the chamfer tool. So what that does is it tries to add in additional geometry, and as you kind of click on it and move away, it will add in an additional span to kind of smooth things out. So that can be quite useful for getting rounded edges and things like that. So the chamfer tool allows you to add in additional geometry. What else will we need to actually kind of work with? Well, you could potentially even things out. So what I'm going to do with this is just select a bunch of verts here, and maybe I don't want this roundness in it. Maybe I want to smooth this out a little bit more. I can make use of the relax tool by clicking on it a few times, and what that tries to do is even that surface out and make it a bit smoother. So I'll do the same sort of thing with this one here, and we can see that it tries to just make that thing a little bit smoother. Now these features are actually linked to: 1, on your keyboard will select verts, 2 will select edges, 3 borders, 4 faces, and 5 is the elements. So if you've been watching the video and thinking, how's he selecting those without clicking on things, there's all sorts of shortcut keys set up, but also a lot of the tools that are available up here are also available in this side menu. So just be aware that there is a lot of duplication of tools. So if you're seeing all these buttons and it's overwhelming you a bit, just be aware that, you know, the features are probably available without any, fuss up in the top here. Okay, so one other vital tool that you would need if you're creating things is the ability to actually select an edge. Now you could potentially use the Extrude tool, but what I'm going to use is just pressing the Shift key and dragging out, and this allows you to just create new edges, and you can do multiple ones at the same time. So example here, I just select 3 edges, there we go, I can kind of create a row of edges, then maybe click the insert tool to add in some geometry. Maybe I want to use the chamfer tool to just even that out. Again, maybe I want to add in a swift loop, and then maybe I want to make use of the smoothing tool, the relax tool, to just even things out a little bit so that it's not quite as sharp on that edge there. So that's potentially how you could go about making use of things to actually start building up your objects. There is a feature called Cut, where it will allow you to start cutting into the geometry to dictate where you want edges to go. The problem with this and newcomers is that they can go a bit cut happy, and you can end up with really bad geometry all over the place. And you might be thinking, well, what's the problem with that? It just means that you're going to have to tidy it up later on, because you'll end up with all sorts of five-sided faces, triangles within your geometry, and this is where you can start using the target weld tool to actually tidy things up. But it just makes it easier if you stick to quads in the first place, and the best way to do that is just using the extrude tools rather than trying to incorporate the cut tool. Obviously, you know, if you need to do it, then fair enough, but try to avoid using it as much as possible, because it does mean you're going to have to clean things up a lot more later on. Now, another aspect that things will have an impact on is if you start incorporating lots of triangles into your scene. If you've got quads, which are four-sided objects, or four-sided faces even, you can double click on your span and it will select the entire lot for you. If you've got triangles in there, what happens is the computer doesn't know which direction you want to carry on with, so it will stop at the point that you've got the triangles. So make your life a little bit easier and try and stick to quads, and only transfer over to triangles when you're happy with the overall mesh. Okay, but otherwise that's kind of a basic introduction to using the poly tools within 3ds Max. So thanks for watching, and keep an eye out for upcoming videos.